Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers, because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button, and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD, and working on a product to help people overcome these problems, because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you. We recently discovered the Biohackers Babes podcast, which is a sister duo on a mission to help empower others to become their own biohacker and upgrade their own life. They cover a wide variety of health topics, with everything from fasting for women to using different wearables to track your health to peptides and biological age testing. If you're ready to take control of your own well-being and optimize your health, you have to check out their show, The Biohacker Babes.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius podcast, now part of the Finding Genius Foundation. My guest is Dr. Amani Ballour. She's a renowned Syrian pediatrician and human rights activist. She's best known for her work during the Syrian Civil War, where she managed an underground hospital known as the Cave in Eastern Ghouta. So we're going to talk about that. I think it'll be really, really interesting. So, Amani, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you would, tell me a little bit about, the conflict that you were involved in and this hospital. How did it begin, and how did the idea of the hospital come about?
Well, I was studying medicine. I was at the 5th year of the medical school when the Syrian Revolution started. It started peacefully. People protest in the streets, asking for human rights, asking for some dignity in Syria. And to the people who don't know, in Syria we have a dictator. He's the son of the other president who was the president for 30 years, and this current president now for more than 20 years. So they control everything in Syria. We have no democracy, no human rights. So when the protests started, and people just go on the street shouting. Sometimes they carry flowers to show that they are peaceful. The Syrian regime started immediately to shoot the people at the beginning, arrested them, tortured them to death. I mean, they did everything to stop this protest, but it was, expand. So they started to use all types of weapons, the warplanes, bombing the people. Then the Syrian regime started to ask Russia and Iran for help. And they started to help the Syrian regime military. So Russia and Iran were fighting the Syrian people with the Syrian regime. I was, as I said, a medical student. I graduated from Faculty of Medicine in 2012. I found myself amid of this war, like I know something that I can help. I didn't practice a lot, I just graduated, but my town and the area around my town, the place called the Eastern Ghouta, it's in countryside of Damascus. Also the people there participate in the protests. So the Syrian regime punished them. So they besieged us and, prevent the food, the medicine, medical supplies, everything, and bombed us with all types of weapons. That lasted for more than 6 years. I decided to stay to help the people because many doctors decided to flee. So we were only few doctors, like volunteers, and try to help because we saw that innocent people around us, children, women, everyone was, a target for the Syrian regime, Russia and Iran. So I saw these people and they need help. And there was That's why I study medicine, to help these people in their need. So I decided to stay and help.
How did the hospital come to be? How did it start its operation? Was it just the only place where you could help people, or how did that happen?
Yeah, the Syrian regime and its allies, from the beginning, they targeted the hospitals. So they destroyed many of the hospitals in the area. So we moved underground because, to protect ourselves, the medical staff and the patients. So we were working in a basement at the beginning. It was like 2 or 3 rooms underground in a basement. And then we expanded, year after year. We need more space. We need more... we have a lot of patients, casualties, wounded. So we expanded it. And, we continue working underground. It became the central hospital in the area. And because it was like underground, always dark, we had no electricity and not enough resources. That's why we called it the cave. It was like a cave. It's, unhealthy for the people and the patients to stay underground, but this is what we could do. So yeah, 4 years after this, in 2016, I became the manager of the hospital, the first woman to be a manager for a hospital in like conservative area in war zone. I became the manager of the hospital for 2 years before we were forced to leave in 2018.
And how did you get supplies in there? You had no electricity, no nothing. How did you get saline or beds or any of that?
Exactly. At the beginning, the Syrian regime, it started in 2013. At the beginning, we used the resources that we have, the medicine that we had at the time, medical supplies. From the destroyed hospital, we took some devices, and we started to work to use what we have. But it was very difficult in 2013 and 14 especially, very, very difficult to get the medical supplies and the medicine. Many times, people died in front of our eyes because we didn't have medicine, for example. We didn't have, sometimes the diagnosis tools to know what they suffer from. I was working as a pediatrician at that time in a clinic in the hospital. So I remember seeing a lot of children came, ask for medicine. They have sometimes very, simple disease, and they need just sometimes antibiotic. And we don't have. So the cancer patients, especially, they suffer and died in front of us. That lasted for 2 years, and then people started to make tunnels underground, and these tunnels go to Damascus city, and smuggle some medicine, some medical supplies, some food. So the situation got better a little, but of course we can't, get a big devices through a tunnel. And when the Syrian regime found these tunnels, they bombed it, but we, people do another tunnel, try, to get. Of course, the food and the medicine we got, it wasn't enough because there were nearly 500,000 people in the area were besieged, and with a lot of, disease, living underground, we need everything. We need food for all the people, medicine, we have all. It was very difficult life, so the needs were very huge. That's why it wasn't enough, but that was the only way we have to smuggle the things we need through the tunnels. And I would just also say that it was very expensive because we pay this, the people who go through the tunnels to buy this from Damascus secretly, of course. So that was through some Syrian leaders who work for the Syrian regime. So they took a lot of money for some medicine, It was very...
Well, they would charge you a lot and extort you, essentially.
Exactly, yeah.
What made you have to move the hospital? When did that happen and why?
To move the hospital? You asked when we had to move the hospital?
Yes, when did you have to abandon the cave and move the hospital?
Yeah, I just talked about this, that the hospitals were under bombing and they were targets for the bombing, so we have to move underground to protect ourselves, the medical staff and the patients. So we had to move underground.
Once you were underground, you had to eventually move again and again, or what happened?
Yeah, exactly. Some hospitals, some places underground were also bombed. Although it was underground, it was, bombed when the Syrian regime discovered it. they bombed it. So many small hospitals, like our medical centers, they forced to move to another basement or another place underground. But our hospital, the cave, it was in a basement, like under a big building. So they bombed us many times, but we stay working underground, try to protect the hospital by bags of sand or something like this, to put it above, to close, all the places, make only one entrance. So it was kind of protected. So we tried to protect it. When the Syrian regime bombed us, many times the shells or the missiles hit the building above us, but it was empty. We were under in the basement. But I remember once in 2015, it was very bad actual memory, when the Syrian regime hated us, and they targeted the basement actually, and the missile entered underground and destroyed 2 rooms of the hospital and killed 3 of my colleagues. They were just, working as volunteers, as nurses. So
Were there people that were giving away your location? Were there holes in the hospital that worked for the government, or what happened?
look, of course, there were people working for the government. Of course, we don't know them, but of course, I'm sure there were. But there were also the helicopter, which always in the sky we can hear, we always could hear its sound. So it was watching, and they watching the ambulance when it enter and where it goes, I think. So they knew the hospitals. I think that's why they targeted us many times. And they targeted the ambulances also. They destroyed 3 of the ambulances for our hospital, and they killed 2 drivers.
Yeah, that's terrible. So what are some lessons that you learned from running this hospital? What did it teach you?
It was, very horrible period of time, actually. I learned a lot. I became really another person after this experience. I was like 24 years old when this started. So I was very young. I was a medical student. I knew nothing about this, like living in a war zone. So yeah, I just shocked to see at the beginning how they shoot the people, how they kill them, and then the bombing, like warplane come and bomb on innocent people, on a hospital, on a primary school. They bombed the primary schools. So to see that the wounded people, the children, and the worst I experienced was a chemical attack. It was in 2013. They targeted us by sarin gas.
Oh, Jesus, it's terrible.
Yeah, and I started my book with this story because it was the worst thing I witnessed, like thousands of people who were suffocating in front of our eyes, and we could just save. We were some volunteers, some doctors. We have no resources, as I said, so we could only help some people of these people, and many of them died in front of our eyes. And many children, when the like chemical weapon, it doesn't differentiate between kids or women or innocent people or other people. So they targeted 2 cities, two towns in the area, and like thousands of people inhaled this poisonous gas and died. So yeah, that was very horrible. I was like trying to live my day. Day after day. We were very hopeful that this will end. The international community will do something to stop this. And that was like everyone saw the videos, everyone hears us. It was like in the 21st century. It's not like something that they can cover. So they know about us, and like no one do anything to stop this. That's last for more than 6 years. And then becoming the manager of the hospital as a woman and face like discrimination against women from my community or some men in my community. Also, that was very hard experience because, just because I'm a woman. And I remember an educated guy was working with me in the hospital. And when I became the manager, he said, "You are our colleague. We had no problem with you, but we don't want a woman to be our manager." So I shocked to hear this. It's not the time that you can talk about women in this way. I'm a doctor. I can run the hospital. So yeah.
That's just stupid. They saw what you were doing. Makes no sense.
Yeah, I really felt sad to hear this and frustrated many times when some men come to the hospital and ask, sometimes they need something, so they ask about the manager to speak with, and when they find a woman, some of them said, no, we don't talk with the women. I mean, not everyone, to just be clear, in Syria, you can find a woman to be a manager of the hospital, maybe in the cities, not in the countryside, but it's not something, I mean, weird. But like this conservative area in war zone, so some men have this idea. So to face this, to deal with this, and with the massive casualties, and I remember in 2018, last time before we left, we just had, I remember this massacre when the Syrian regime, or someone said that they have bread, and people were for a few days underground without food. So a lot of people go and try to get bread, and they bombed them. The Syrian regime targeted them. So there were a lot of casualties, a lot of burning bodies. I saw this, and we were very tired that time, because massacre after massacre every day. We didn't sleep, just working. I remember even the corridors of the hospital full of bodies. So we just watching. We could do nothing for these people. So you can imagine what kind of person these circumstances can make you. So I just wanted, after all this, to make the voice of these people who still there, the victims, make them heard around the world, tell the world about their stories, help the other people who stayed there. I mean, especially the people who are living now in the camps in Syria and in neighboring countries and still suffering for more than 10 years. So yeah, this is my goal now, to advocate for these people. This is my goal from the book also.
Right. Well, how do you feel like this changed you and your relationships with people? Do you feel like it's hard for you to relate with people nowadays, or what did it do to you?
That makes me feel more about other people who are suffering. That changed my goals in the life, changed my dreams. I was just a dream to be a pediatrician. I like kids. I wanted to be a pediatrician, have my own clinic in Syria, like maybe have a family. But no, now I all my dreams changed. Now I want justice, and this is my first and main goal in the life, to get justice for the victims, for the children who died without sin. I mean, for the people, for the detainees at this moment, like hundreds of thousands of detainees in the Syrian regime prisons, they're being tortured now. I mean, every minute maybe some of them died, and no one know about them. We need to speak for these people. They have the right to live. They have the right to be free. For the children in the camps, for example, there's 2 million or more than 2 million child in northwest Syria now without education. They have no access to school. So these people have the right to live. This is now my dream, my goal, to come back to my country, to rebuild my country. So this is what I think about every day. This is my life now, to speak with these people every day. I have friends, colleagues, part of my family is still there in Syria.
What things have you tried to get attention to this that have worked versus things that you've tried that haven't worked, that people don't seem to respond to?
Well, first I wanted to tell all the people around the world the stories of these people, the story about Syria, what happened, the truth, I mean, against the Syrian regime propaganda, the Russia and Iran. You know, they are stronger than us. I mean, they took their stories. So I want to tell the truth for everyone. That was through my documentary and the book now. So I want everyone to read this book, know about these people, know the whole truth, the story of the victims. And after you read the book, you have, I believe that everyone have responsibility to help the people who are suffering, not only in Syria, everywhere around the world. It's a responsibility to help each other. I joined a Syrian American Medical Society. It's an organization which supported medical projects in Syria and neighboring countries, also in Greece, in Ukraine. So we're trying now to help, as we could as possible. And our organization now did a great job so far. We have like 40 facilities, medical facilities, and make training, support women, support nurses and midwives. So this is my way now. I'm trying to do what I can through this organization to help people there and tell everyone to help them, to be their voices, speak up for Syria, speak with the politicians. I mean, we have the right here, like in the US, in Europe, to speak with politicians. We had no rights in Syria to speak. So speak, make a pressure on the Syrian regime, at least to release the detainees, to get justice for Syrians, donate for the organizations. There's a lot of organizations who support Syrians now. And just make like research, ask for these people who are suffering in the world, everywhere, like in Syria, in Gaza, in Africa maybe. Some people now sometimes we watch like these hungry children in Africa, for example, and we think that, okay, we get like sad for them and then we turn off the news and go to continue our life. No, we have responsibility to do something. I believe everyone can do something, everyone. Simple thing maybe, just to speak about them, tell someone about these people. You know, when we care about each other, like sometimes when we suffer, no one will care about us if we don't care about each other, right? So this is my goal now, to tell the people. Yeah, exactly.
Why do you think that everyone in the world is worried about Ukraine and Russia and no one cares about people in Syria? Is it because there's no resources, or like what do you think is the real reason that governments act or don't act?
Yeah, always there's ways to help Syria. I mean, but because the Syrian Revolution and the Syrian war started in 2011, it's now like 13 years after this. We noticed as Syrians, that people started to forget Syria or like feel hopeless of helping many people, and especially the UN agencies who were dedicate a lot of aids at the beginning to help Syrian people, to help Syrian in the camps, to support education, support health field. Now they cut off their aids, and people continue to suffer because more than like 13 years. And that's why I decided to write this book and to remind people about the Syrian. They still suffering. They still need help. So yeah, because it become like and all the crisis, and they start to feel hopeless. But there still be people there, like many children, they need help. You can't just say, no, this is something we can do nothing for it. Always you can do something.
Okay, very good. How can people help that are listening? What can they do? Should they see the movie first, or what?
Yeah, exactly. I really want just to tell people to feel that make the people who are suffering feel that you care about them. Try to know their story, know the whole truth by my book and other resources, like watch the news, like just at the beginning know the truth about what's happening about them. And like you can donate for the organizations, you can speak up for them, tell their stories. Everything can help. Just when you feel this responsibility that you are a human being and they are a human being, and this is our goal in this life, so you can do something for them.
Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I'm sorry about all the terrible things that you had to endure and the good work that you're continuing to do. But thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.